I want to welcome everybody to our work session tonight for the March 9th for the Huntington County Community School Corporation work session. In terms of what we do with these, a reminder to our public, these are non-action items. These are more informatory. These are discussion items. We usually pick 2 to 4 topics and try to have a more in-depth discussion with our board and community. We usually have presenters here to go through things with us as well. It might be Mr. Peters or myself at times as well, and take questions as needed. So with that being said tonight, thank you for joining us. And our first discussion topic tonight for our work session is on the science textbook adoption. Mr. Peters and your team, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Brimberry. I've had a chance to kind of ponder as I start to reflect on my career, and I couldn't help but think that I've had the opportunity to work with some very dynamic people. And tonight you're going to hear from 2 of them that rank right at the top of 2 individuals that I've had the honor and privilege to work with. Lynn Brown, assistant principal here at Huntington North High School, is our secondary PD coordinator, and Lauren Hogue is almost wrapping up. It doesn't seem possible, Lauren, your first year as our elementary PD coordinator. And so what we wanted to do tonight, board, was just to share with you and to our public our science textbook adoption process that we went through this year. We're going to bring back to you on March the 23rd a proposal with definite costs for you to vote on that and approve that for us. That would start the 26-27 school year, and then that will begin that process of ordering materials and getting them in here this summer before school starts in the fall. So I have Lynn and Lauren here. They're going to share out. They've got a PowerPoint they're going to present to you, and we can take questions at the end. So ladies, thank you so much.
And lean in, I was told. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're just going to take you through some of the steps for coming to a decision that we'd like to bring with our science adoption. So we started with looking first at the state-approved list of vendors, and we took that to a science committee that we had that had probably 2 or 3 teachers from each elementary building. And so they were able to go through, go to all the websites, and they narrowed those choices. There were, how many do I have? 14 on the list, and they narrowed it down to 3 to 4 for us. And then from there, we contacted the vendors and got samples. So we brought samples to every single elementary, and then all of the teachers were able to go through and kind of vet these resources. So they were able to go through a checklist. We mirrored our criteria to match the high schools, just taking off some things that weren't appropriate for elementary. And then we also the principals invited families in as well to look through the materials. They also went through the state standards to make sure they really felt like they truly matched the curriculum and what they wanted to be able to teach for the students. So from there, the teachers took those, the criteria, and we talked to the parents, and then everyone was able to submit their own vote for which choice they liked the most. So we narrowed it down then. We have one that overall won, and so then at this point, then we bring it to you all for board approval. So there were 14 companies total on the vendor list. So we're looking for something that was very easy for teachers to use and be able to implement, incorporate into their schedules. Obviously that it's aligned to our standards, and then also integrate into Canvas since we're trying to use that technology piece. So our recommendation is Discovery Education. This includes Mystery Science, which is what our teachers are currently using. So it's a nice smooth transition, very little training needed since they're used to this and they're using it. Looking at that digital format since it is being used. But the great part about Discovery Education is that it not only gives us access to the science curriculum portion, but we also get some of the social studies, the math, and the ELA, so they can be using it across all their content.
So secondary has not had new textbooks for 14 years. So we've had a hot moment since we've had new textbooks. So we went through some similar pieces and some slightly different pieces as elementary. Prior to this adoption, actually 4 years ago, Jay said to me, hey, we're going to get new science textbooks. Remember that, Jay? And we We went to caravans, and we got all the sample books, and we actually ranked them, and we were ready to go. And then the state of Indiana said, do not buy anything. We're going to create a new approved list. And so we put all those books on a shelf, and then we looked at them again, and we did the process another year. The third year, we just didn't bother doing anything, and then this last year, we've actually readdressed it. So we looked at the brand new state standards, and we wrote curriculum before we even looked at the textbooks, and we actually taught that curriculum for a year before we even looked at the textbooks. In alignment with the new state standards and the frameworks. The frameworks take the standard and then branch it out so that you can see the vocabulary that goes with the standard, sample questions that go with the standard, and experts in the field. And then this year, we looked at that state-approved list. Sometimes there were 7 or 8 books that were approved, and sometimes there was 1 book that was approved, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. We narrowed that list down. Every middle school and every high school science teacher was on the committee, because in high school, sometimes you're the only one that's teaching the course. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 people teaching the course. In middle school, it's such a small group of people, it made sense just to let everybody come and sit around the table and have that discussion together. And then we created a stakeholder group. The teachers, the principals, and myself created a list of about 50 community members. Some of them, many of them were parents. Some of them were people that have helped us with grants or have helped us with a PBL in the classroom, and they're experts in the community. One of them was a ELL specialist that worked with us from HU, so that we had different eyes on the work. And then we made the final decision, and now we're seeking board approval. Cindy, if you would pretty please. Thank you. For middle school, there were 7 companies on the approved list. We immediately gave the middle school science teachers all 7 companies' websites and their sales pieces, and they went through those, and they determined whether they wanted to throw any out. Like, they could just tell from what was sent online and the flyers that it was no good. We got down to about 4. Of those 4, we asked those companies to come stand in front of the teachers and present. We used to go to a caravan, and there wasn't one available, so we just had our own caravan, and they came to the Learning Center, and they had a half an hour to present and a half an hour for our teachers to ask questions. After the teachers went through the 4 pieces, they ranked them 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we had a discussion about the top 2. And the top one was Savas. That's really good news, because not only is it a very well-recognized company, but it was about $400,000 cheaper than the number 2, which was Imagine. So that was kind of nice when we found out that we saved $400,000 right off the bat. Cindy, could you advance one for me, please? High school is a hot, screaming mess. It is really, really hard to do high school science and high school social studies, because each of the content courses have a different list of books. So for ICP, for example, the state gave us 1 choice. I know, right? That's bizarre. And we hated the 1 choice, so we had to become imaginative to do that. So we went through the same process. We looked at all the books. We had a rubric that we've used for English, we've used it for math, and we've used it for science. And if we ever adopt social studies again, we'll use it for social studies. And teachers went through, and then they told me which companies they wanted to have come and present. In some cases, especially for AP or dual credit classes, there's already a recommended book, and so we just stayed with that book. So the companies came, the teachers talked. The teachers didn't stay all day. Biology teachers came in and went back and taught. Chemistry teachers came in and went back and taught. And so then we came up with a list of books. Cindy, I think it's on the next slide, but I don't remember. Go one more for me, because I just said those things. Go one more for me, because I just said those things. For high school, we also wanted to make sure that we had a balance between the chemistry lab and the biology lab and what actually was in the textbook. So if you would advance a slide till it says high school textbooks for consideration. There you are, Cindy. You're perfect, Cindy. So you'll see we're looking at a lot of companies. Jay has a lot more work in his horse trading for high school than he does for elementary and middle school. He has 1 company to try to talk down He has several. You'll see that some of those companies, like the last one for AP Environmental Science, is actually a college-level textbook company because it's a college-level course. The teachers in those courses actually contacted the company themselves and then came back and said, yes, Lynn, the approved book looks good for us. And so that's what we went for. And then we have the exact same timeline as elementary. Our hope is that we will seek approval with you and we'll be able to order things so that they're here in the buildings. One of the really important things is, this might surprise you, but when you order this many textbooks, you don't always get what you ordered. And so we'd like to be able to go through those boxes and make sure what we ordered actually comes before we leave in the spring, so we don't have teachers that come back and say, hey, so we have twice as many chemistry books as we need, but we have no biology books. That literally happened with ELA a couple of years ago when we got twice as many 10th grade and no 9th grade books. So we'll go through it and then do our level best to get professional development for those teachers in May and June so that when they start in August, they're good to go. I think we're ready for questions if you have any for us.
Board, if I could share with you while you're still thinking, I'm sorry, Mr. Allen, did you have a question? Mr. Melcher? No, go ahead. No, you first.
You might answer my question.
Let me give you some estimated costs. Again, estimated because I won't say this is a fun part of my job, but trying to help them understand that we don't have a lot of money. And we are a rural district, and here's the amount of money that we have to spend. What can you do for us? Because we would really love to go with your company. However, this is the amount of money that I had to work with. And so elementary around $39,238.50. Grades 6 through 8, $211,849. High school, $247,612, gives us an estimated total cost of just under $500,000 at $498,699.50. And so, again, we will have an actual cost figure for you when we bring this proposal back to you on March the 23rd. Let me share with you what has happened, as Lynn shared with you. When they paused the science, and we've been pausing, it seems like forever, that backed up that adoption cycle where we should have truly a year ago been in that social studies adoption mode. Well, guess what? They haven't printed the vendor list yet. So what does that tell you? So now we're on pause, but now, guys, we're now facing, in the next 2 to 3 years, English language arts adoption needs to be in the next 2 years because of that 6-year cycle. And then we'd have reading for elementary. So we're kind of in a phase here where it could be the next 2 or 3 years where you're going to be going through an adoption cycle. And so your question you're going to ask me, and thank you for asking, is, Jay, where's this money coming from? It's a great question. Now, I knew Ryan was going to ask that, so I'm ready, Ryan, for you, buddy. It's a great question. Remember back when Becky Smith was our virtual CFO, and up until January of 2025, that curricular fee was separated from the education fund. And then they married that one-time gift the state gave us of about $750,000, if you remember that state reimbursement, probably never to be seen again, but that would sure help because I just shared with you $498,000, $750,000. Boy, that would do our adoption every year, but that was just a one-time gift, I think, and we're not expecting that to happen moving forward. The education fund then in 2026 includes the curricular materials, and that's about $1.5 million that sits in that account in our education fund right now that's earmarked for textbook adoption. One of the things that Michelle Babcock, and she's amazing, what a great, great hire. Fun to work with her. Tyler doing a great job. Tanya and I have met with both of them saying, how do we do this adoption for the next 2 or 3 years, and where is this money coming from? Because I'm an old poor farm kid. Rub 2 pennies together. You know, we've got to have this money and be good stewards of it to make sure that we can get the resources and materials for our kids. So what they're wanting us to do now is putting together an estimated cost budget that would go in effect for the 27-28 school year that would incur the costs of like what social studies adoption might be, what language arts adoption might be, and the cost there involved, so they can begin to incorporate that in the budget and build that into that budget, obviously using the material fees that we currently have right now. So we've never done that before. Here estimating 2 years from now what the cost could be, but that's the way it's got to be in order for us to make sure that we've got monies set aside for the next 2 or 3 years with adoptions. So,
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to be the person replacing you. Mr. Peters, thank you for that financial update, because I was forgetting about 750. Do we anticipate the state figuring out some things here? I mean, is there any
it's a great
news
question.
at
I
all?
talked with Tyler again today at length, and he said, again, he wrote a little note there for me. We are not expected to receive any additional funding for curriculum materials from the state going forward. So, and I think, again, he's in tune with that. So I think that's, I wish we could, because this would take care of our adoptions every year. If we could get that money, this would be a piece of cake for us.
Yeah, and I think Mrs. Brown said that, we've been waiting for social studies for
Yes.
a decade. I mean, it really has been something. I didn't realize we'd been waiting that long for science.
Yeah, and social studies was a year prior to that, so we're about 15 years out for social studies. It's been a minute.
So to Jay's point, I wouldn't bet that they would put anything in the next biennium. And that's coming up. So January, they're going to start the biennium budget. But with this adoption cycle coming on, it needs to be a conversation. I know it's on ISBA's radar. They have not had it as a priority for a while because there's been nothing to adopt. But I would almost guarantee you, as a legislative priority, it would be again to have those conversations. We're now starting to adopt some books, and we have some funds set aside. I guarantee you there's other districts out there that have nothing. And what I would love for you, just very briefly, remind us prior to the legislative change how we used to fund this. So why it didn't used to be a problem and now it
Correct.
is.
Because of
can you do
textbook
that? I
rental.
could do it I could do it very badly, but could you
Because
maybe
we
do
used
it a
to
little bit
collect
better?
textbook rental fees.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of that collection, there was monies there because of that collection that we could then have a fund source to be able to look at adoption.
It was a self-funding
Self-funding.
process.
Yes.
So when the state took over textbook adoption and made it free to parents, which I am all for, I think it's a great thing, what they really did not do for us as a board is give us a funding mechanism, which is all right because they didn't have any new adoptions out there for a while. Now that we're starting up the adoption process, we need to go back and advocate not only for our district, but all the districts, that you took this over, you did not, and it was a self-funding process, but now it's not. So we're going to need to help advocate for us. I know it's on ISBA's radar. It's coming up. If you have a chance to talk to any legislator, just as a reminder, this is not something that they've had to deal with in a while, but it's now something that's coming up. It's just as a reminder, when we see these are some of the talking points that we need to advocate, not only for HCCS, but as the state as a whole, because we're not the only ones. We, again, as Mr. Peters had mentioned, had some money set aside, and we can kind of do that first round. But just as Lynn says, we've got social studies, and then you got, English language, all that stuff coming up. You're going to have math coming up here at some point too. We've got to have a funding source to help do that, because with it all being lumped in the education fund, and that's why I asked Becky to earmark that back in the day, is we'll lose track of that. And then we've just got to make sure that, all right, this is for textbook adoption, this is for salaries. We've got to figure out how to make that all happen. So it's a very important process and something that we need to keep cognizant of. I appreciate Jay mentioning that we set that aside, because we earmarked it. It's just all in that bundle, but that is an earmark there for that. So.
And again, kudos to kudos to Michelle and to Tyler, again, for that budgeting process that they will do here this summer once we give them an estimated amount, and that budget process that they will do so that in 27, 28, there's going to be monies there available for adoption to take place. So out-of-the-box thinking that's crucial.
Which is also helpful when we go to talk to our legislator. We've already budgeted this amount. This is what
Yes.
we need. anything that you can help provide will help. So that number is very important, not only for us, for a budgeting standpoint, but in our advocacy when we talk to our legislators. So that's a number that we should socialize broadly and so everyone knows.
To be respectful of time on this topic, I also want to commend the previous board and leadership. One of the first board meetings I watched before I came to this district, Jay was talking about textbook adoption as curriculum funding. And there was a healthy balance at that time. What Huntington has done well over multiple years and under Mr. Peters and different leaders with different boards they have always come in under the textbook adoption and had basically a savings account of a couple 300, from what I can tell in our history, 300 to 400,000 a year to cover future textbook adoptions. And so when I saw the 1.1 back then has grown to 2.1 before they combined these, please know that's why they're in good shape. That's why Jay can do what he's doing, is he's done the work with this board in the past 7 years to be ready for this. But I will be clear, Michelle Babcock was asked in her first interview, what is your plan at your district and what would it be for ours on textbook adoption with these changes? And she got into the weeds pretty quick about what that plan looks like 2 years out, 18 months out, 36 months out in terms of budgeting for that. So I think we're very prepared. I think also we're prepared in a manner that maybe a lot of districts aren't due to previous work that's been done here by the board and Mr. Peters, to be honest with you.
One quick question. I know you talked about books, but does it come digital too? Or is it just books?
We're looking at digital only.
Digital only?
That's what we're using right now,
For
so
both elementary and?
for elementary, we're looking at digital.
And for secondary, we're looking at classroom sets of textbooks so that kids who, in IEP, a 504, they're learning the language, they have a concussion, there's a lot of reasons, would be able to check that book out. You can use them in class, and then the exact same book will be digital, so they'll always have it with them. Plus, there's a platform for each one of them that has some other pieces to help kids. Digital labs, for example, videotapes that demonstrate some things. So it's a combination of both. It's the cheapest possible way we can do it and still put textbooks in kids' hands if they need one.
It's amazing you say cheap, but you know, you think all the paper and all that goes into making a book, and you're talking digital, and you know, it's like a price of a USB and hand a USB out, but it's still expensive.
My thing is, Jay, ladies, you got the parents involved. You got the parents feel like, a couple parents I've talked to have felt like you actually got us involved in this. We're involved in our kids' education. I'm glad you did that, Jay. That was a good, thank you.
And moving forward, guys, critical. When that social studies adoption list comes out, that vendor list that we've got to choose from, that parent involvement will be, it's critical anytime you have textbook adoption. It's going to be really critical when that social studies curriculum comes out, that we get eyes on that at all levels.
Final questions on this topic before we move on?
Mr. Peters, on that $750,000 that the state gave us, is that included in the 1.5 million?
Correct.
Other questions before we move on? Len, Lauren, thank you for that part of your presentation tonight. Mr. Peters, always well done. The second topic tonight is something that we've worked pretty hard at Huntington the last couple years, as well as the state of Indiana, to be honest with you, is a little discussion of the checkpoint data. I swore to the ladies that I will let them do this because this is near and dear to Chuck Brimberry's heart. But just a reminder to our board and to our community, checkpoints are in my old world were called formative exams. And formative exams are just that. They're a snapshot of how your child is doing at any given time that you take the exam. Many districts, before the state did this, would give 10 or 15 or 20 point every 3 weeks or so over maybe 1 to 3 standards. And then you build into your curriculum to reteach or to enhance based on how the kids are doing on any particular topic. The state adopted that. I never thought I'd see the day. And I will tell you that we are working very hard on that with our kids and our teachers and Lynn and Lauren and Mr. Peters and a host of lots of what we call PLCs, professional learning communities, where we get our teachers together and we talk about the data for children on how they're doing. And then we review our maps and see how we need to tweak those in in best interest of kids' learning. So, ladies, if you want to talk, we've got a little bit longer time period for this, up to 30 minutes to talk about this, the process a little bit, and maybe your thoughts on how we're doing on this process as well. So thank you for sharing this tonight.
I get to go first this time. First of all, it's not on a slide, but I would like to thank Lauren. She has been fearless in looking at this data. I've had a number of partners in elementary, but none of them have stepped up to the plate and said, how can we make real change and look at our data the way Lauren has? And the model that she's following is the model that secondary has been using for a little bit, and I could not tell you how proud I am of her and how happy I am that she's doing this really hard work, because it's easy to say we love all of our kids and we love each other and hug each other and walk away and not make any real changes. It's really hard to look in the mirror and say I need to lose 10 pounds and actually lose the 10 pounds. She got him to look in the mirror the other day, and I'm really proud of her. That's hard work to do. Thank you, Lauren. All right, Cindy, we ready? So my job is to teach a little bit of history, which is what I do anyway, right? That's my favorite thing in the world. And Chuck didn't steal all my thunder, so I got a little bit of it left. So the state of Indiana went through a big bunch of changes in 22-23 school year. The laws changed dramatically. The Department of Education changed their goals dramatically. And I think we were uniquely set up to take advantage of some of those things. So the first thing that they did was they changed the standards, which then caused changing of curriculum, maps, instructional tools, and pacing of the content. We're going to show you those three things as we go through. They also took a deep dive into the science of reading. If you're paying attention, they're about to take a deep dive into the science of math. That's the next thing that's coming up. They changed the titles of courses and the courses that we need to teach in middle school and high school, and we are working on those changes even as we speak, as you guys know. We were uniquely positioned for the changes in the diploma. The accountability law just was made known to us last week, and I was one of the few people in the state that was kind of happy. I was like, oh, check, oh, we're going to change this whole thing. We'll talk about that another time, but we're set up for that really, really well. They changed STEM requirements, and then, of course, they completely redid iLearn and checkpoint data. So for most of my career, this is what iLearn looked like. They gave you standards, and there were a lot of them. They were kind of vague. And you kind of hoped that you were teaching what was going to be tested at the end of the year. You taught with all your heart all year long. They gave a test right before the kids left. The kids didn't do very well on the test, but you still had field day, and then you came back and you did it all over the next year, right? And there was very little as an individual teacher you could do to make changes in that, because you didn't really know what was on the test. And you didn't really know the level of rigor, and you didn't really know how much of anything was going to be on the test. And guess what? They've opened the doors, and they've actually shown us what's on the test, and the level of rigor, and how to support kids who are in the process. So Cindy, if you would change the slide. I stole this slide from the Department of Education, but I left their symbol on so you guys know that I stole it. So they took the standards as they sat in 2020 or 2022, and they said, state law said they had to take 25% standards away and create prioritized standards. And then out of those standards, 33% of the 75% that was left were essential standards, the ones that are most often tested. All right? I did a lot of math there. I'm sorry, Tim. All right, change the slide. You had that, like, why did they do that? I don't actually know the answer to that, but they did. They did it, though, in part to create this cycle. And the cycle is the cycle of good teaching everywhere on the planet, right? First of all, what is it you're going to teach? Then you check and see, do the kids understand what you're teaching? And then if you need to, you respond to it. You can stretch some kids and you can reteach some other kids. And then you check again to make sure the reteaching worked. And then before you give the summative, you check one more time, you work with them again, and then you give the summative. So 2 weeks ago, I sat with the middle school math and English teachers, and we looked at what's on that summative test, and we said, hey, friends, here's how many questions are on this set of standards. Are we ready? Do we need to do anything different? Do we need to reteach? Do we need to reteach groups of kids? What are we going to do? Here's how many are on the next set. We couldn't have done that even last year. They've made updates even during the school year that allowed us to do that. Cindy, if you would change. Lauren's going to go over several parts of the slide individually in just a moment for you, but I want to give you the big picture and then she'll drill down. So I said to you that before we just had standards. In the upper left-hand corner, you will see a sample of the frameworks. And the frameworks take a single standard and they break it down into what's the actual academic vocabulary. What vocabulary are we going to see on the test? So that people aren't saying things like you're folding it hot dog and hamburger style, and then the kids see vertical and horizontal on the test, right? They give you exactly what it means to have mastered it in multiple bullet points. They give you common misconceptions, things that they expect most kids are going to struggle with, and they give you things that can help you with individual sets of kids. It's normally a 2 to 3 page document for every standard. They tie that to the upper right-hand side, which is called a blueprint. For every grade level and content area, they give us a blueprint, which is a standard, what quarter or checkpoint we're going to teach that standard in, and it's going to be tested for. And then, at the very end, how many questions are going to be on the final, the summative, and what percentage of that test is on the summative. It also tells us if all kids are going to get a question on that standard or if some kids are going to get a question on that standard. It'll also tell you if it's a multiple choice question or some kind of performance activity that the kids will need to do. Then they tie that to the bottom section where they give us the percentage of kids who've met above at proficiency, below proficiency, approaching proficiency, and are seriously in need. And then they give us reports that drill down to individual kids for each one of those standards. So creating a small group of kids who are at proficiency and we want to drive them to above is really simple. We just have to look at the report. To find the kids who just barely missed it and probably know it and made some kind of test-taking mistake, and so really we just need to review and make sure they really understand it, that's really simple. It's the first time in my career that any of these items have been made available. And that last section where it tells us exactly how many questions are on the summative, that wasn't available to us 6 weeks ago. It really is brand new, and that's why we met again, and I said, hey, friends, we got new information, which made us happy. Now, Lauren's going to walk you through the details of the checkpoint and how we use these 3 charts in more detail.
Go ahead. Thank you. All right, so what are the checkpoints? They are short assessments. So as Mr. Brimberry said, they're formative assessments, and they really are for teachers to be able to drive our instruction. Parents do get the reports, and I'll show you what those look like. So parents starting this year with the test this year will be able to track their students all the way through ECAs in one spot, which is really nice. So parents are given those reports, but they really are for teachers so that we can find where students have gaps and fill those gaps. So we have 3 of them, and they all have windows. So I'll talk about that in a second here. But each checkpoint has 2 opportunities. So the numbers get a little confusing. It'd be nice if they said Form A, Form B, really. But we have 3 checkpoints, and in each checkpoint, there's 2 opportunities. The state requires everyone this year, last year was a pilot year, and this year, everyone in the state has to give opportunity 1. You have the choice to give opportunity 2, and we at Huntington are choosing to give opportunity 2, and that helps us show growth once we reteach. So these windows, the first one opens around September 9th, and it goes to about the first week of November. As soon as the first one closes, the next one opens. That one goes to about the beginning of February. As soon as that one closes, the next one opens, and that goes to April 10th, which is a Friday, and the next Monday, the summative opens. So it's just a cyclical, there's always a window for something open. So you have to give the first opportunity within that window, but then when you give the second opportunity, you can give it any time in the year. We choose to give those opportunities within 4 to 6 weeks of each other. We try to do that before the next window opens, so teachers really can focus on the standards that we're trying to reteach if needed. Okay, you can go ahead and switch for me. Thank you. So the reports that we get this year, we had no data last year. So the reports we have this year are about 4 pages. This is the top of the first page. You can see that bottom with the 4 different colors, that kind of sliding scale, that will show us where students are falling. So if you're in the blue or the green, you're passing, and if you're in the red or the yellow, you did not pass. But within that, we have 4 proficiency levels, right? So below, approaching, at, and above proficiency. So we do hope that within even the second opportunity if needed, that students are passing and they move to the green or the blue. But the nice thing with that sliding scale is on the report, students do get a raw score, and so we can at least see growth. So if I have a student right in between that red and yellow area, and I reteach and I'm working with a student, they may not fully pass, but maybe they get really far into the yellow. And so I know they're on track and I can continue working with them. And the goal is then to fill all those gaps before the summative. Go ahead. Thank you. All right, so when we're using this in our classrooms to drive instruction, I'll kind of work backwards. First, for our tier 1, which is just whole class instruction, where you hope to get everybody, right, and you're in great teaching. So what we've been able to do is scaffold the lessons. I'll show you an example of a map that we've reworked this year, but we've scaffolded those lessons for teachers to show, if you think to that red through blue scale, those proficiencies have descriptors. So let's say we're talking about area. It will tell us what students can do when they're in working below proficiency in area, what kind of things they can do at approaching, and so on. So what we've done is we've taken all of those skills and we've put them like scaffolds. So teachers are starting at those kind of below level skills and working through approaching and then at and above. So we're trying to push them as far as we can. And that's what those proficiency level descriptors are. So that's what teachers are using to drive their initial instruction in class. We've also reworked our end of unit assessments with some of the information that Lynn showed you. There are also, why can't I think of the name? Items, proficiency item specifications. Thank you, that's the one. Item specifications, and they give you exact samples of questions that students will encounter. So we've been able to take those and create end of unit assessments so that students are receiving those after the unit of instruction, which then leads teachers to know before even a checkpoint if students are understanding or not, and can do some reteaching even before the checkpoint. And then they get to the checkpoint, and now we have all of this data, and we can say students are passing or not passing, and that's where we start forming small groups for instruction. This is the blueprint that Lynn spoke about, and so on here, it has the frameworks, those are in the indicators on the far left, but you can see more close up, it shows which checkpoint specifically each standard is tested in. So what we were able to do was take our master maps and realign them. In grades 3 through 5, it no longer says quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. They say checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2, checkpoint 3, so that we know all the standards are being covered and we're giving our students the best chance for success within those. So specifically, you can see the left-hand side, that is what one of the master maps looks like. We have done a lot of work to link that and make that very user-friendly for teachers. That's something that I hear even just today. I was out of school. Every time I see somebody, they comment about the master map and how it's easy to use. It has all of those parts from the DOE that Lynn described before linked right there, so teachers have everything they need to plan well and really intentionally for students. That middle big section on that master map has all those bullets, and that's the scaffold that we built for them. And then the unit assessments are built in there too for them to easily access. Once they've taught those and they take the checkpoint, this is the third page of the report we get from the checkpoints with kind of like that rainbow colors there. That tells us for one student the specific questions for specific standards that students encountered in the order they encountered it. So the green is it's color coded the same as the front page that I had shown you. So for that standard, they got an at level question, and then if you see to the far right, it's a check, so that tells us the student answered it correctly. The next one was a below level question. They answered that correctly. And then you see the blue one has an X, so we know that that student did not answer that question correctly. And what that allowed us to do is go to that far right-hand side. I created these for the elementary teachers to use to break that data down. So if let's say, those two at and below were the same standard, they may not be. If they were the same standard and a student did well on that, and they did well until they got to an above level question, then that student just needs more work in the above level proficiency in that descriptor for that standard, and so on and so forth. So what teachers have been able to do at the PLCs that we've gotten together with, that Mr. Brimberry talked about, we've been able to break those down, and that created very specific small groups for teachers to just take right away and start teaching students to remediate anything that they are lacking and need more help with. Sure. So these are some of the things that we've been doing this year for elementary and secondary, and you can see they're almost exactly the same. We've aligned our master maps like we talked about. We've had those professional development sessions for teachers with those district grade level collaborations too. Those have been very powerful this year. Our IXL, I'll come back to that here, is linked to our checkpoint data. We've remediated. We also have been in contact with the iLearn specialist named Logan Miller. We've talked to him many times. I talked to him today, actually. He is wonderful in getting us help. We've actually had several meetings with him, presentations, just to ask questions, because this is new data and reporting that we've never seen before. So he's been able to lead us through and answer some questions. And the state is making adjustments. That sheet that I showed you that the teachers are breaking their data down, the state's actually going to do that for us next year, which is wonderful. Everyone's going to be very excited to know that, because it's very time consuming, but it really gets you to know your data, which is great. So going back to the IXL quickly, that's a program that we pay for, the district pays for, and it's linked for both math and reading. And what it allows teachers to do is assign specific standards. It actually is linked to our math textbooks as well, so it can correlate directly to that. But my favorite feature is that we have the checkpoints that feed directly into that program, and it allows students what's called a skills plan. So wherever they have fallen in their proficiencies, it generates the exact types of lessons and question types that students need to help start filling those gaps. So between that program and the teacher, they're kind of getting double duty to hit what they really need.
My favorite part of IXL is that middle school teachers are putting questions up on the TV and saying to kids, all right, find a partner, how do you answer that question? And kids are tearing the question apart, drilling down and thinking together, because often the pure math the kids can do, it's the question that's catching them up, right? And they're learning how to tear apart the question, analyze the question, and then come up with the answer by themselves. They're doing that often at the beginning of class and the end of class, so kids are seeing questions that are exactly like the ones that they're going to see on iLearn, and they're not just at home trying to figure it out themselves or sitting in a study hall trying to figure it out themselves. They're working with their teacher and with their peers to figure out those questions. That's going to create amazing growth. I said this to you a year ago, and I just want to bring it up again. Our teachers were pretty fearless and brave when they created the master maps for the new curriculum, because they realized that you couldn't go from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 3 anymore and actually meet this new curriculum map that the blueprint that the state had created. And so they tore apart their textbooks, not literally, but figuratively, and they figured out what to teach when. And then occasionally they said, oh, but we're still going to have to teach this a little bit here, or they won't understand it. For teachers, that's a big deal, especially some of our teachers who had taught something for 20 years, and we ask them to rearrange and redo and rework. The other thing that that's not on there, but that we realized this year is we were going, at or above proficiency or die, right? Early in the year, that was all. We weren't even going to think about anything below that, which makes complete sense until we found out that lots of the questions were at approaching level, and the kids hadn't seen those kind of questions for a really, really long time, and so they were missing questions that on the same standard, but were easier And I said to them, that happened to us on the SAT as well. There were 7th and 8th grade questions on the SAT our kids were missing just because they hadn't seen it for so long. And as soon as teachers were like, yeah, you remember how to do this, and they'd get halfway through the problem, and the kids would be like, yes, we remember. And so we went through some approaching questions as the year continued, and that helped to build up some scores. And it's one of the things that they're doing right now between now and the test is going back to some pieces. Who knew? But that was because they gave us data that we could actually look at and problem solve. And we asked our friend Logan Miller, who also, by the way, is Kurt Crago's nephew. Fun fact we found out last week. I think we're ready for questions.
I'm sure we have a million of them here, so. I'll start with maybe Mr. Peters is the one to ask this, or Mr. Brimberry, but is funding tied to test scores?
A little louder.
Funding for the schools still tied to test scores? or
Well,
not?
I'll answer that in this way. Our test scores will be reflective in our school accountability. It's a huge part. Mr. Peters and our elementary teachers' iRead scores, our special education scores, our every assessment the state values and deems are part of school accountability. So when I say they're tied to us closely, it is a huge percentage of how the kids will receive, and I'll bring this to another work session on school accountability in the very near future. Each child will get an individual score and grade, and then each building will get one, and then our corporation will get one. So is it, I believe we have excellent, and you know this, and the board believes this, excellent instruction and an excellent culture in Huntington County Community Schools. We have to understand the processes of how we're held accountable in a manner that also accents the child's growth, the child's achievement, but also our school. And so for us not to know these affects all three levels I just talked about, and we know it in the weeds. And so is it directly or indirectly? I would say it's indirectly tied. You will, in a year, get a school grade. Maybe next November, each child will get one, and each school, and then our corporation will get one. We know what that means to perception of districts, and we know that children are seeking out the best game in town, and so are parents. And so I think, yes, indirectly it is.
Well, the reason I asked is because I guess I've been on the board long enough to know that if a test starts with the letter I, if it's I read, I learn, I wish, whatever it is, it means that we teach sometimes to the test because it was directly accounted for funding we used to receive.
Yeah, and it's a great question, Mr. Allen, and what I'm going to answer that on is we want I heard Lynn Brown last year talking at one of these meetings, and she talked about that we want every child going home successful because they know they can. And if they didn't hit the achievement mark, then they're hitting the growth rate mark at a higher rate than other kids. And so when I see this kind of professionalism of the weeds of what do we want to teach, reteach, and enhance, what motivates me in this district, and it motivated me previously, is I want all of our kids to know they can. I know what comes with that. If you do it at a high enough level, you're perceived, your kids are successful, the kid's self-esteem builds, the kid's self-worth builds, your collectivism as a district, as a building grows to the point where kids see themselves highly successful, and that's what all of us want. And so I don't care what the assessment is that the state gives us, you are 100%. If it starts with an I, it's important. We want to be able to say you can learn and you can achieve, and if you didn't hit the achievement part, you're learning at a rate that is significant enough. Remember, Mr. Peters brought you a piece of data. Almost 90-ish% of kids hit the iRead after last summer. That's unbelievable, and Deb commented on it. Russ Diggett said at one of our last meetings, we hit almost 94% on graduation rate. The start of their career with our pre-K 3, the end of their career are both extraordinary numbers in this district. The process of these assessments along the way, and I'm going to say this, depending on the level, there might be at middle school at Riverview 170 kids in a cohort. Maybe at Jay's Flint Springs, there's a smaller, or maybe that Andrews. The percentage you can't get hung up on. And I say that because it might be 7 kids between below state mean average and 3 to 5% above in one cohort. At Jay's, one of his elementaries, it might be 3 to 4 children. What I want the district to see is the beginning is right, the end is right, and we're working really hard on everything in between because of the value of the child along the way. And I say that because an anomaly can happen and 7 kids pass that they were approaching and you got them there, and that's a huge celebration because we're 5 to 7, 8% above average. That can easily go 1 point below another way, but the instruction has been excellent both sides of this. The growth rates is what you want. If you notice, a small section of test questions equals a large percentage. And the smaller the cohort group, the larger the percentage. So you can have wild swings without with still having excellent instruction. You need to know that because you're going to see them present. And I want us to be always in Huntington very cognizant. We believe our kids can learn at a high level here, and we have evidence to show that. We believe the teachers do a wonderful job. I'm going to say it, and I say it all over the state already. Our teachers are very, very talented. Our administrators are committed to the growth. The start rate, the end rate is outstanding. We know that. As we learn assessments, and as we see the 3 to 5, the 7 to 10, the swings in this, we'll get a better idea on the mean averages of what to expect on growth rates here. And I want the board to always see it. You'll see some anomalies every now and then. It does not indicate instruction or the ability to learn. Some of us have taught in this room, in the classroom, and you can be excellent and be a point below on assessment that somebody changed the cut score. That somebody is called the state of Indiana. They can change the cut score. You saw 30% mastery with the state of Indiana with all schools. I question the cut scores. Why do I say that? Because the academic achievement on both ends are excellent. So when we examine, when we're in the weeds of this, you'll keep hearing me say these kids' growth rates are excellent. Their mastery is very good. We have multiple data points. If a parent gets information that says, oh, my kid was approaching's a snapshot along the way of their academic life. That's okay. We're okay. We'll get you to achievement soon. And I don't want us so caught up in one score as I am all scores over time. I definitely have 2 brothers that do very well today that probably wouldn't have done well early in their life on some state assessments. Later in life did very well and do very well as adults. So snapshots along the way, they need to be able to read, they need to be able to write. We got to love them through literacy. And then at the end, we got to get them ready for the workforce, employment, the military, and other things. Huntington does those 2 very, very well. Our community needs to hear that 100 times. We do that very well in Huntington. The process along the way, you're going to have an academic presentation frequently here, if allowed, on how the kids are doing on their assessments. But I don't want to judge children in 5th grade when I know the outcome in 7th grade, they're right where we want them. It's just a different process. So I hear that because the community and board, we're getting questions from parents already. They're encouraging, Mr. Allen. My kid was approaching. What do they got to do more of? Well, that means our teachers are talking to them about, hey, we about got them. Well, I don't want a negative on approaching. I want a positive. I want momentum. Next year you're going to get it, maybe next assessment. That's our message through and through. Yeah, we're going to prepare them for the test. When you achieve, we're going to celebrate with you. When you have growth rate, we're going to celebrate the same way here. If you need us, we're going to be there. And that's the message I want to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Brimberry. Sorry, ladies, I was afraid I was going to turn him loose. I never intended to. I really didn't. Mrs. Miller, you have something?
I do. If you don't mind, because this is my bailiwick, before I retired. This is what I did for Pearson Education. And there's an analogy that helps folks who aren't in education. You hear, well, you're just passing them on. And then you hear, you're just testing them to death. This system is based on a tremendous amount of research, dug deep over a lot of years, and it's a medical model. So if you think of it like that, something's wrong, and you don't know what it is. So you go to the doctor, a professional, and they take your temperature, formative assessment, short, quick formative assessment, and they find a problem, and they give you a prescription. And things aren't coming along as well as you'd hoped. So you go back, well, they have to test and see if that prescription helped, right? And again, that's why we have multiple formative assessments. They're different for different children or cohorts or groups of children who are suffering from the same malady, whatever it is. And so if you've heard the term MTSS, multiple tiers of student success, that's exactly what it means. There isn't one prescription that fits everybody. That's what we were accused of years ago. They used to call it the shotgun approach. You just put it out there and hope it sticks, right? We don't do that anymore. So we stay with the application of prescribing, testing, checking, prescribing. And that's what the system is. It's just based on a medical model. I hope that analogy helps. I used to use it all the time. But if you think of it like that, it makes it a little easier. Thank you for letting me do that.
Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Allen, ladies, thank you. I come from a teacher's perspective, and we're talking about all of these levels of kids and having a lot of data. And I would think it would be easy, let's just say, for example, a teacher with a classroom of 18 kids, probably in the first few weeks of school, they have to differentiate 4 different ways. By March, is it possible then, with all of this data, that they will have to differentiate 18 different ways? Because of all of this data, are we creating nightmares for our teachers?
I think the answer is yes, because we all learn at a different pace and a different time. However, those 18 kids are all in the 2nd grade or the 6th grade or the 7th grade. And in most cases, it's not just a teacher that's helping them. There's a team of people that are helping them. I'm super proud of our middle schools. I know the same pieces are happening in elementary, where as we start to see clusters of kids with a deficit for a specific standard, it may be the science teacher who says, I can do that math, I'll teach that piece. It may be the math teacher who says, I read pretty well and I can help them. And so kids are being helped by a large number of people. What these new reports do for us, though, is it pins it down enough that we can figure out what it is all those people can do to help us. Because at one point, we were just kind of spreading kids around and saying, these are low kids, so you help them low, and these are high kids, so, and I taught kids one time how to set a table because they were high kids. That didn't help them become above proficient. They did learn how proper etiquette, but it didn't help them with their test scores at all. So I think you're correct that we're helping kids in a more individualized way. I don't think it's a nightmare to do that. I think it's a better use of our resources and more proactive thinking about what it is that we can do. I will also say that Mr. Allen started to say, are we just teaching to the test? And then Chuck went on his dance, right? And he quoted me, so I'm going to quote me again. I taught a I-STEP test once upon a time when I was teaching 7th grade social studies, and I've taught a lot of AP classes. And I've come to understand that if I, as a teacher, really, really understand the test well, I know what the kids are going to be tested on, I can buy back a lot of instructional time to do the things the kids like, the things that I like, the things I think they should know, because I'm being very, very prescriptive in what I need to get done for the test. When we were guessing what was on the test, I had to cover everything in the kitchen sink just in case it was on there. And now I can say, well, there's 7 to 9 questions on these 4 standards. I know what those 4 standards are. I know I've taught kids to proficiency. Now I can talk about the Middle Ages because I love it, or the Battle of Gettysburg that I could talk to you about for 6 to 12 weeks if you wanted me to. So, yes, but we have an answer for it.
I'll add if that's okay. We've been talking a lot at elementary about teaching to the target, not teaching to the test. What we have now, because we have so much information from the state, we're not just guessing. It's not just this big, broad standard. It's very well broken down, so we do understand specifically what we're being asked to do so that the students are being prepared. They happen to be tested over those target skills in a test, but we're teaching them to these targets so that they can be successful and continue. And so I agree, I don't think it's a nightmare. I took pleasure in having so much information individually for my students because I knew I was meeting them exactly where they needed and not just saying, I hope this is what you need, come back and talk to me, right? I felt really good, and I could talk to my principal, I could talk to the parents very specifically about their child. So the longer I went and the more I knew, I felt more empowered to be able to teach them exactly what I knew that they needed, and that they were gonna feel empowered and successful.
And I might add to that.
I would just like to say, it is nice to see you guys come in front of us and not be frustrated with trying to talk about how you use a shotgun approach, how you can feel like you're really accomplishing things from day to day and hour to hour, because again, I've been on in here a little too long, I suppose, but I remember just, us just trying to find good questions to pick you guys up, because we knew how much a struggle it was for you to go through the days and just hoping that you could help the kids, as opposed to knowing where to go and to find the answers for them. So that's refreshing.
Guys, this embraces what we just talked about here, what Mr. Brimberry, what Lynn and Lauren have said, every student every day. We're talking about that right here. This embraces the everyday, every student, everyday concept and mission and vision that we have for a district. I know, Cindy, you pulled the slides down. That's fine. The one that has that cycle, I think it's like the 3rd slide. As a building administrator, and I put my principal hat on, this slide right here I would have in front of teachers, and I want to call it the cycle of continuous improvement. The cycle of, so when we collaborate, if we were 2 teams of teachers, we're doing data dives. Lynn and Lauren are doing data dives. Teachers know their data. They know what that looks like. And so use this cycle of continuous improvement to be precise, be personalized. We wrap that with professional learning. And this is the cycle. When we collaborate on a weekly basis as a grade level team, this needs to be in front of us, and this is our guide, because it goes down, provide learning opportunities, check the learning. Guess what? Respond to the needs. Do we remediate? Win time, you've heard win time. Do we accelerate? What do we do? Every student, every day. And this is right here, guys, that we're doing, and these ladies are doing a wonderful job with that. So great question, Ken. We're going to be excited on March the 23rd. Lauren is coming back to share data from the elementary and what she's doing with our elementary teachers. So again, thank you for the opportunity.
Any other questions from the board? Ladies, wonderful job on both presentations tonight. Could not be more blessed in Huntington to have both of you involved. I've watched both of you in your professional learning communities, and I watch both of you step back to the corner once it takes off, and the teachers engage with each other and teach each other. And it is a wonderful, wonderful situation that I'm seeing in Huntington in terms of true professional learning communities happening with colleagues now in a very safe environment where we can reflect and talk and work together. So thank you for your presentation and all your work that you've been doing. We're blessed here, so thank you. Next up, for our last topic of the evening, Matt Stevenson is here to talk a little bit about the Employee Benefit Trust. Matt didn't ask me to say this. He didn't hand me a card before we started, but I will tell you, my first year in Huntington, I was surprised. I had not been to a self-funded insurance company. We were part of a consortium in my previous districts. And second of all, I had not been a part of one where it was teacher-led as the majority in terms of the meetings that we attend. And the last part would be Matt Stevenson is not only an excellent teacher in our district, but he is an extraordinary leader of others. Matt is not going to tell you this, so I'm going to, but he leads a rather important group that benefits all employees in this district. He is very conscientious. He takes input, but he also has to make decisions sometime on our committee. And so, Matt, I appreciate your investment in Huntington, not just from the classroom, but your leadership role. You're a very talented gentleman, and I appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thanks, Chuck. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm not sure why we're all sitting in here when it's beautiful outside and we have an extra hour of sunlight, but here we are. So I would just want to start by giving a little bit of an overview of the trust. The trust was established in April of '95, so we're going on 30, we're over 30 years now. I've been the trust president since right at the summer of 2020, which right at the height of COVID. So that's when I took over the trust president from Doug McElhaney. You can see our administrators that are on the trust. We have 5 voting administrators and we have 5 voting teachers. So that is a balance between administrators and teachers, and we have some non-voting members as well. And Julie Shearer, she used to work for the corporation, is our trust administrator, and she does an excellent job. We are incredibly fortunate to have Julie as a member of our team. And we have been working with LHD Benefit Advisors for over 11 years. Ben Fuelworth is our primary advisor. He's a partner with LHD, and they are highly respected in Indiana for their work with benefit plans. So you want to go ahead. So last year when I was here at this time, we were, for lack of a better term, in a kind of a state of turmoil. We were experiencing a lot of high claims. Our reserve accounts were just kind of plummeting. We were getting hammered, and we had to make some kind of dramatic shifts. John Trout was incredibly helpful in that. He had some good ideas on his end at central office about how to kind of keep us more stable from literally week to week. Some of the changes that were made on the end of the corporation was we were getting premium payments into the trust every 2 weeks, and that could come down to we didn't have enough money to pay the claims at the end of that 2-week period, and we're frantically hoping we have the cash flow. And then what John did was he said, okay, well, let's pay him every week. I believe that's what we're doing now. It's every week now. Is that correct? I believe it's every week now. So I don't see that money. That goes through Julie. But so we made that change. It was also decided upon that if we did not have the money in the checking account, that the corporation would kind of float us that money for a brief period of time, and then we'd pay that back. During I guess that was the winter of 24 into 25, we had to take a couple little mini loan type of things for very briefly for literally maybe a week, and all of those were paid back, and that has not happened since. So it was just that really brief period of time that we were really kind of underwater, frankly. So just so everyone understands, and I guess public understands, that the corporation pays into the trust the premium portion that they owe, so the 80% roughly that they owe, and then the employees pay into that as well, and then all claims are paid out of the trust accounts. So there's we utilize, currently we are utilizing Anthem's network, but we pay Anthem for usage of their network and to process claims, but they are not paying the claims, so they are not taking the risk. like the financial risk on their part. So that's one benefit of having a trust, is we aren't paying somebody else to take the risk. We take the risk. So if you take a look kind of where we were at last year and where we're at this year, we had 3 straight years above budget. We were all resulting in a significant deficit. We were losing cash flow in our reserve accounts. And so what we did at the beginning, well, end of 2024 into 2025, is we switched over to the Anthem Health Sync network with higher discounts. We have co-pays, so it's a PPO network. It puts kind of the biggest thing that, again, all insurance changes cause frustration with people every single time. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. One of the things that happened this time was we moved or shifted Parkview into the tier 2 of our network, because Parkview is more expensive to go to, and that was costing us a significant amount of money. So we pushed them into tier 2. They are still a network, but it does cost more to go to Parkview facilities. So as you take a look, kind of a brief summary of 2024 into 2025, you can see kind of on the third line, end of year performance, we were at 108% loss ratio, and about a $550,000 deficit in 2024. And then last year, after switching over to Anthem Health Sync, we were at just about a 90% loss ratio, and we had a surplus of $680,000. So we are on our way. I can happily say we are on our way to stabilizing our stance and where we're at on everything and our cash position. On that, I guess it's the fourth line down there, the trust cash position. You can see the checking and savings and the operating and reserve, where those numbers were at the approximate end of 2024 and where they were at the approximate end of 2025. Again, I'm using approximate because any snapshot in time is going to be very different from day to day. So I will also say this, as of, I believe I got this information at the end of February, the checking and savings was up to $1.3 million. So we have made significant strides there and just getting a better position. So that was good news. And our increase this year was only 4.4% from 24 into 25. So that was good to see as well. Next slide. On this slide, what I'd like to just point out here is that the red line there being the kind of the trend for health networks, and you can see that we are below trend, and you can see that last green box is showing the significant recovery that we made last year in terms of our deficit. Go ahead. On this graph, it's a little hard to see where I'm sitting. I think you probably have that in front of you, but the yellow line, I believe is the color of it, is showing since basically 2018, we've been running at deficits. I think we had maybe 1 year of a surplus, and then of course last year was the surplus, but it had been running at deficit over and over and over again. And then, like I said, we recovered last year. So last year, I guess the big thing is last year was a significant improvement on our position. So this is 2024, and you can kind of see this is a month-by-month graph showing kind of where we were budgeted. The dark green line is the budget, and the light green is what our expenses were. You can see that peak in May. That's not unusual to see highs and lows as the year goes on, and it's definitely not unusual to see a gigantic spike in December when people are trying to use their last of their benefits or trying to reach their deductible and try to get a surgery or something at the end of the year. Whatever the case may be, that's not unusual. But if you take a look at how high that is over $800,000. So, approximately $600,000, $100,000 is deposited into the account every month. And so if we're experiencing months that are, $800,000, that reserve that we have, that's where that money has to come from. And so if our reserve is being used up nickel and dimed by all these high claims, when we hit a month like that, that's when we're in trouble if we don't have that reserve to back up. So I know when I say we've got about $1.5 million, that sounds great, but we use basically half that every single month to pay claims. And this is representing the 2025 performance. You see that big spike in January, and I was seeing that, Julie Shearer was seeing that, and it was a little concerning that we had just made a change and we started seeing that, and Julie kept saying, a lot of this is from the UMR, the UHC rollover. They were trying to clear out their books with us, and we had contracted with them through the end of through the entirety of last year, I believe is what it was, so that we wouldn't be responsible for any claims that happened to pop up like in September. Because if they popped up in September and we didn't kind of contract with them through the end of the year, we would have to cover the entire thing, and they wouldn't have any discounts or anything for us. So, but most of those rolled off probably about in March or so. And then actually just recently, we just received a deposit into our account of about $118,000 from UMR that closed our account. So we got a nice little bump from them as well here recently. I think that's all I wanted to say about that slide. Here we have just some things about general performance. Inside that red box, you can see our discount percentage has increased this year, or last year, I guess. We're almost up to 60% discount. We're hoping to have a discount of over 60% this year. Over there to the side, those percentage of claims, you can see that I need progressive lenses. It's hard for me to see what's in front of me and up there at the same time. So in 2025, you can see percentage of paid claims and network is slightly under 100%. I don't know why that is. We'd have to dig deep and figure out why it's like 90, almost 99%. So where that 1% is coming from, I'm not sure, because just reminding you again, that Parkview is still in network. And that was one of the concerns that I brought to you last year, that when we made the change and put Parkview as a tier 2 provider, that people thought Parkview wasn't going to be available to them, but it is. So where exactly that is, I couldn't tell you that part. And on the bottom part, again, employees are still paying roughly about 80%, or excuse me, the district is paying roughly about 80% of all cost distribution, as they have been. So we aren't having significantly more placed on employees, percentage-wise. Go ahead. This is giving us a little bit of the pharmacy overview. One of the biggest areas that we struggle with, and you hear it on the news all the time, is prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are huge cost, namely those specialty drugs. You can see last year we had a drop, and I won't say all of this is due to one specific drug, but a lot of it is due to one specific drug, Humira. It was very expensive, and we didn't have that many people on it, but it was enough to make a huge dent. And Humira recently, in the last couple years, went generic, and we made the decision. Chuck says Matt makes decisions. Matt doesn't make the decisions. The trust makes the decision, and the trust made the decision to take Humira off our formulary and move to the generic. So our employees cannot get specialty or name brand Humira. They go generic now, and that saved a lot of money. And that was that transition was made kind of the middle of last year and was completely official at the beginning of August. Okay. So moving forward, some things that we're looking into this year for maybe making some plan design changes to help employees and try to steer usage is waiving deductibles for freestanding office visits for diagnostic services. So rather than having those at a more expensive hospital setting, trying to get employees to go to a freestanding facility and just waiving the deductible for them, and the trust would pay that, because overall that's going to be less expensive to everyone. Another thing that we're beginning to look at is embedding supplemental health coverage within our actual medical plan. Now these are the things that employees have the option of enrolling in. Currently we're with American Fidelity. I don't know that anybody necessarily has an issue with American Fidelity, but this is just an option. So like, accidents, cancer insurance, those types of things that you can buy supplemental insurance for. The thing that people often run into is they buy those plans and then they forget they have them or don't know that they have them. They bought them, they don't even realize they did it, whatever the case may be, and then they never use the benefit. And so by having them integrated into the actual plan itself, those things would happen basically automatically. And so people would get reimbursed for, whatever it is that they've enrolled in. They'd still have to pay for that because you do have to do that through American Fidelity as well, but they would get those payments automatically. So those are a couple of things we are looking at for this year into next year. This is not something that we're currently doing. We're just considering doing that. And just a little bit of information on where we're at for this year. You can see up there, I've highlighted the contracts that are up for this year. So our medical administrator with Anthem is up at the end of this year. I don't foresee us making any changes this year because we literally just made a change a year ago, and that's rough on employees by doing it more than once every 5 years or so. So, and again, the plan ran really, really well last year. And so at this point, there's no reason that we would think we would need to make a change. The stop loss, again, for those of you who are unaware or have forgotten what stop loss is, it's essentially insurance for insurance. So once a claim or set of claims for an individual goes over a certain amount, then stop loss kicks in and covers everything beyond that amount. So that is vitally important. And then the employee assistance program down at the bottom, we are contracted with Parkview. Meg Friesen has done an amazing job. She kind of took that program, I don't want to say she took it under her wing, but she started working on that and trying to get more employees steered toward using the employee assistance program for their mental health or financial help or just kind of general needs that people have. Her concern was last year that people didn't know it was an option. And so she's been working to try to get more people going that direction. And John Trout was a big advocate of that program as well. And we didn't have high utilization of it. And so at one point last year, we were considering using a different vendor rather than Parkview. But we decided to stick with Parkview and let Meg do her magic and see if she can help get people steered to that. One thing I do want to mention about the stop loss is, so we saw a lot of improvement this year from our stance, and there's a lot of different factors in that. I mean, part of it was our plan design change. Part of it was employees moving to tier 1 providers, so that's helpful. Part of it is luck, frankly, when you have employees that are not getting hurt, not getting injured, not getting sick, then you don't have those large claims. So there's a lot of different factors of why we had an excellent year last year. And, I hope that the claims continue to roll how they are. I will tell you that January and February were very good months. They were very favorable months. So I don't want to say too much and jinx myself, but things are looking good right now so far. So I believe that's the end of my slides. So I'm open for questions if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Go ahead.
Right now, for the corporation, we'll use me as an example. I'm on metformin. So if I'm a teacher, where do I get that who am I getting that metformin through now? I'm on it every month. I'm on it every day. Where's that coming from?
Do you mean the medication itself?
Correct.
Or
Yes.
like the actual drug?
Well, the reason I'm saying that is I work for one of the biggest corporations in America.
Okay,
A year ago, they made us go to Express Scripts,
okay,
which is was a third price versus going through Parkview, through Walgreens, and I had to get it by a 90-day supply, but it's third the cost.
what
I
it
don't know.
was, like it was a
Yes.
third of what it is now?
Yes, by going through a company called Express Scripts.
Okay.
And they ship it right to my house.
So our current mail-in is with Costco. Have you looked into that?
Yes, which
Okay.
is higher. They've looked into both, and Express Scripts was a third.
Okay. And you're explicitly talking about once we change this year?
Yes, when you
Okay,
go to
okay.
change, that's something you probably need to
Okay, so I'm hearing you, Gary.
Yeah.
Mr. McClellan, that is a piece of information that, and for information gathering, okay? And I hear you, and I have heard that before.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
you're not the first one to bring that to
And
my
I
attention.
didn't have a choice. Company I work for, we have 54,000 employees. We didn't
Yeah.
have a choice. But it saved the company millions of dollars and it's actually easier to do. I don't have to go to Walgreens.
Yeah, we don't have, obviously, we just changed. I mean, we're 2 months
Yeah,
in with
correct.
Navitas right now, so we don't have a ton of data. And so I'm not really sure what things look like right now. It's hard to say. But yeah, just those little anecdote things are helpful to us in getting an idea of people's experience, because that's important. The numbers are important, but people's experiences are just as important for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Melcher, you have something? He's the trust guy, all right? I'm just telling you, back when I first started, I didn't know beans from apple butter about the trust stuff. That guy was raising Cain about it, and I kept shrugging my shoulders and rolling my eyes, and he was right the whole time. So I'm never going to forget it, and I'm not going to let him get out here unless he's got something he don't want to say. Okay, great. Then you must be doing wonderfully. Mr. Wall.
I just want to thank you to come talk to us today. I know we don't participate in the trust directly. We just have the administrators and the teachers are part of it, but we are footing that bill. But we appreciate you coming and just giving us an update, because I was a little worried last year when we were talking about that stuff, and I appreciate the changes that were made from the trust, and I'm happy you guys are continuing to do that at a great pace, and things are looking good. But I just appreciate you coming and filling us in. It's not something you really have to do, but we do appreciate you doing it, so.
Thanks.
Mr. Wall, comment on Mrs. Babcock. Her past experience has been with a self-funded insurance company, and when she joins us, she'll be joining. She did virtually last time, if I remember, and so that expertise will be important as well.
Thank you, Mr. Brenberry. Anything further? Go ahead.
I'm going to say, good job of getting it back where it needed to be, because I've been here, this is the 12th year, and when I come on, it was a mess. You guys, with Mr. McElhaney kind of straightened it out a little bit, and you've done well with it too. Good job getting it back where it needed to be. And
Yeah, and I like I said, when I took over in 2020, little did I know the chaos of COVID that I was walking into, and that first fall, I guess it was that winter actually, when everybody's going to the doctor and crazy things are happening, was the first time I was like, okay, we don't have enough money to cover claims, and I had to pull out of the reserves, and it was just like, those are the things that happen, so.
And that man right there can tell you, we've had ugly board meetings over the years over this. We've had knockdown, correct. In the old days, we've had knockdown, drag-out battles, and we don't seem to be having these battles anymore, so good job.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan. I also want to just acknowledge that you mentioned Mr. Trout several times, and I think he really obviously played a real instrumental part in making sure this thing got moving back correctly. And I know that he took on a few very difficult decisions, but good to see that it's where it's at now. So thank you. Anything further for Mr. Stevenson? I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?